Good afternoon. This is New Era Gardener, and we're gonna go over a couple of bins. I hope everybody's doing well with the snow we had. These are some new bins, and I'm just gonna go over just checking them and feeding them. This is a bin that was actually done recently on 1-3, and this one did have a little bit of food in it. It is a little dry on the top, but I'm just gonna go through it. This one on the top has a lot of what was remaining over in the last clean out of this particular bin, the biochar, any coconut coir that didn't break down. So on the top, it is a little dry, but this bin also had quite a bit of alpaca beans in it. But the worms are nice and lively, as you can see. So, good moisture. Not concerned about the moisture. The moisture content is good. So, yeah, feels good. You know, like I said, when I do my bins, I fill them up about 5 inches with bedding. And it's a very, very good, healthy bin. As you can see, the worms, there's quite a bit of worms in there, as you can see. And they look shiny. So that's the moisture. They got good moisture content in here. So they're happy. And like I said, this particular bin had quite a bit of alpaca manure in it. It was all the beans. So, of course, that's like candy to them. So that's what they're going to go after first. Like I said, it does have good moisture. And any of that dry. I mean, as you can see, like I said, this bin has only been going for just about a month. And you don't see as much newspaper in it as you would do as when I started it. So that looks good. And I'm going to spray the top with my little mixture. Just to give it a little moisture. Like I said, it's got good moisture. This particular bin, I am going to feed it. And I do have some pumpkin that I had outside. I've been leaving my pumpkin outside. Usually I cut it up ahead of time and leave it, put it in the freezer. But this time I left it outside. It's freezing outside, so we're just going to put one piece in there. And that bin looks good. That's all it is. All you're doing is to check on your moisture, how the bin is maturing, and they're eating well. The piece that I took out, I'm not going to put in. I'm going to put it in a different bin. So that was number one. bin for 2021. We have another bin that I did. I'm just kind of going in sequence. This bin was done on 7/1. And now if you look at this bin, this particular bin has a little more paper on the top. No dry spots. So that looks good. It does have some food. They were fed. I'm going to upset them by taking the food out. As you see, they're having a feast. So I'm going to just knock off some of the worms. I'm going to leave it here and hopefully they don't run out. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm going to upset them a little bit. Moisture in this bin is perfect. Castings. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. And just look at this. This is what I talk about when I'm doing the bins. Look at this bin. The first bin I showed you was done on 1/3 of 2021. This bin was done on 1/7. 4 days later. Pretty much the same amount of paper as the other bin, the bedding. And this one has so much more paper in it. Sometimes it's the micros in it, in your bedding, in your worm bin, and it could be because, like I did, I used a lot of the remnants of what was left over that didn't break down in the bin. So a lot of times that had a lot of biochar that was in there. And the biochar becomes active as it sits in these bins and the worms are going around it, gnawing on the little fibers that are on it. But I mean, the stuff looks good. A lot of worms. Beautiful red wigglers. This one has a band on his neck, so it's a mature worm. And does have some biochar that I added in. So I mean, it's a good bin. They're lively, good moisture, a little more moisture than the previous bin. I mean, as you can see. So now I try to make sure that at least every couple of weeks I go through the bins and kind of mix it up, turn it over, because you also get these clumps of paper. And if you noticed, in some of these clumps, there's worms. So they're feeding on the paper that's in it. And like I said, the other one doesn't seem to appear to have as much paper left over in it. And that could be because, like I said, with the, I mean, like, look at this. I mean, there's worms all through that. There's adolescents, there's baby worms. So you got a mixture in there. And with the microbes that might be in the active biochar that was in there, you know, the microbes are going to also eat the paper. And then the worms are going to eat the paper because the microbes are on it. So, very good bin. Very good bin, good moisture. And that's what you want to check your bins. You know, if you were doing a 55-gallon plastic bin, you know, half full, cut in half, and half of it was full, no, you're not really going to be able to go through the bin as much if you have a full bin. But something like this, we're able to go through it and kind of look through it and see how the worms are doing. So that's another good bin. It's going along good. I'm going to put this back in. Just gonna put these back in. They were going to town on it. And actually, that one piece I actually pulled out, I'm actually gonna throw that in this bin. So that's number 2 bin that's been fed and looked at. And it looks good. So can't go wrong with that bin. One more bin we're going to look at today. This was done on 1/24, so this one's fairly new. So I don't know if you noticed this bin. This bin has a little more mold or fungi on top. Fungi, mold on the food that I put in. It doesn't seem, I don't see any life on it as far as any worms underneath when I lift it up. These are radishes. I mean, not radishes. These are beets from my garden. What I am going to do is I'm going to take these out. And put them to the side for now. Trying to find somewhere good to put them. And there is an avocado. They are starting. There are some worms underneath the avocado. So I'm going to move this to the side also. This bin, and it could be fungi because, and this is the top once again with the paper. It is a little dry. I am going to tell you what I did with this bin. This particular bin, one thing I mean, look at that paper. I mean, it's pretty dry. But we're going to look down further in and kind of look and see, investigate and see what it looks like underneath. But that's quite a bit of paper that's on top and it's dry. But this particular bin has quite a bit of sawdust in it. I've done that with another bin. I mean, there's a lot of worms in there. But I will say this bin seems to have a little more paper than usual. Than I would usually put in. So I'm not going to do anything different to the bin. I'm not going to, but there are a lot of worms in there. But there is also a lot of paper. A lot of paper in this one. I think I put a little more paper in this one than normal. But there are some nice sized worms in here. I don't know if you can see them moving around. I won't do anything. As you can see, there's a lot of fat worms in here. So the moisture level is really good. But there is a lot of paper in here. And we all know the paper picks up a lot of the moisture. But I think also with the sawdust that was added to the bin, that newspaper, I'm just going to try to incorporate it a little better. But this bin was only done roughly, what's that, 10 days ago or so. So I mean, as you see, the level of this bin is nice and high, but it also does have a lot of paper. So what I'm going to do with this bin, because it has a lot of paper, this particular bin I'm not going to feed, only because I saw a lot of the activity that wasn't happening. We have activity that's happening in other bins where the paper was almost all gone and it wasn't done that long ago. Another bin that there was a little less. This bin was done on the 24th and it still has a lot of paper in it. So I'm not going to feed this bin. And that's what you have to look at when you're doing. I am going to wet the top of this. And that's what you have to look at. You don't, when you're wetting down your bin also, you don't want to put too much water at the time because you can't drown your worms. They're going to go down, so I'm not worried about it. I didn't put a lot of water, but what I'm going to do is this particular bin I'm not going to feed. I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna let them starve themselves, and that's one way of kind of forcing them to eat what's here. If you don't feed them for, so now I'm doing it today. I don't feed them anything. When I check back in them, excuse me. When I go to check back in on them in a week, let's say I check them Sunday, check my bins on Sunday, I check this one, and I stir it up and I start to see that the paper is going down, then they're eating the paper. So I won't feed them probably for a week. Let a week go by. Let them kind of get hungry and eat what's there, because that paper becomes the organic matter that's in there. The carbon, they will eat it. There's not a problem with that. So just let them eat what's available to them. So that's all you do. And that's all I'm going to do is let this one. So that's 3 of the new bins that I actually made for 2021. Those are the new bins. They'll all go for 3 months, sometimes a little longer. What I am going to try to do is I want to kind of have bins in sequence. So I have 3 bins that are going to be harvested on 2/28. Those 3 bins, that's good. I have 3 bins. One that's supposed to be done on 2/8, one on 2/14, excuse me, and one on 2/14. Those particular bins, I'm sorry, 222 and 214 and 228. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let those 3 bins go, and I'm going to let those bins go to a different time because I want to get those 3 bins close to each other as far as the time. The 8 and the 14, it's not really going to make much of a difference. But from the 8 to the 22nd, that's a big time. That's a couple of weeks. So you can get more out of your bin if you let it go those extra couple of weeks. So I may allow all the bins to go until somewhere close to the 22nd, and harvest them all on the 22nd, and that way they got their full amount of time. And it just also depends on what the 22nd bin looks at. And let's just take a quick look at that bin real quick, and then we can kind of see what I'm talking about. Just because I know my bins, I've seen my bins, I look at my bins on a normal basis, I kind of know what my bins look like. The bin for the 8th, that bin is ready. I could harvest it today if I wanted to. That particular bin is ready. We have a whole apple in there. My wife likes to feed them whole apples or put her pieces in there. I mean, they will eat it. You probably heard me say before, solid hard pieces, they don't really eat it, but the micros start to get on it, and that's what they're eating. It might be a slow process, but they will eat it. So I'm just going to take the apple out. I know I'm going to upset them. I have a little ring of some squash here, butternut squash. It's got some worms on it. So, and if you could see, I don't know if you could see it, but those are the worms. Those are the worms in that ring. So they look good. But I mean, if you look at these castings without me even touching these, they look good already. They look ready. This is the 22nd bin. So, looking at this, I could almost say that I don't have to let it go. I mean, look at the castings from further down. They look beautiful. I mean, right where, they're right where the food is. They look good. Moisture is good. I mean, look at those. Look at those. They look good. Lively, happy, full, fat. Moisture. And when I look at my moisture, like, to me, I mean, look at that. My moisture, when I look at moisture, to me, if my hands are like that after I kind of go in it, it's a little moist. It's a little moist. I would want it to be a little bit drier than this. So on a scale, when you're doing your moisture level and you stick the moisture meter in there, it says, dry, moist, wet. I'm not going to say this is wet, but it's moist. So probably with this bin, what I'm going to do because these bins have been eating a lot more of pumpkin and squash because I had loads of it. Um, and then in between, they do get some. Uh, they do get some dry food. My worm chow, worm food. You can't say worm chow because that's something else. But worm food. They get the worm food and they get the alpaca. So because of the moisture on this, um, I mean, like that's for me, for my castings. I like them to be a little drier. Um, so to me, if I get done going through my bin and my gloves are like this, then that's a little moisture in the castings than I want. So, but it's a good bin. It's healthy. Does have some fruit flies. Um, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ring of squash back in. And I'm going to put the apple back in. And that is all the food I'm going to give them. Also, what I'm going to do is pretty much when this is gone, which will probably be gone in the next several days, the apple will take longer, but they'll probably devour the rest of this by Sunday when I go in and check on them again. That'll be gone. And then what I'll start to do is I will start to feed them dry food. So also what that will do is when you're adding food scraps in, there's moisture in these. You know, that's how we make apple juice. Squash, as it starts to rot and decay, it lets out all its juices. So it gets wet. But what I want to do is try to dry it out some. And, you know, if you had a bin that was soaking wet, like when you go to pick it up, it's like mud, then you would add paper. Or you would add more coconut coir. Or you would add sawdust to it. Or you can also add a cup of biochar to it. The biochar is going to suck up that moisture also. So there's things you can do to it to bring it back to the moisture level that you want it to be. When I sift my castings, the only thing I want to see in my screen in my sifter when I'm done sifting are worms, debris that's in there that hasn't broken down, and the biochar or the coconut coir bigger pieces that didn't break down. I don't want there to be castings left in there. So I like mine to be a little more drier to go through the screen 100%. If I went to go and sift this today, I would have clumps left over. It would go through, but I would have clumps. So that I don't want. So I'll allow this